Welcome to the Fly Culture Podcast, bringing you interviews, reviews, and fishing tips. Here's your host, Pete Tigers.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast. You've just got me this week. I thought I'd mix things as I always try and do and keep content relevant, fresh, and a little bit different. And I thought I'd talk you through a little bit of the tackle I've been using this year and my favourite picks from it. I should say at this stage that none of it has been given to me. So I bought everything. So this isn't advertorial. This is just stuff I've liked and really enjoyed using. And it's sort of that time of year. It's a bit reflective, I suppose, because the trout season has finished and the salmon season on my home river of the Tor. And it's at this time you sort of reflect on stuff a little bit. And I think about the season. I think, how did this season actually play out? And I don't know, it's been one of my best. As ever, it's always been enjoyable. Would it be a top 5 season? Probably the answer to that is no. I think the highlights have been company of good friends. I remember Keith coming down bright and early one morning, and we kept sort of changing how early we'd meet because it was during summer, but we'd had a little bit of rain. Everything felt right, and we were going to swing some flies for salmon, which we did. And we fished pretty hard, and there weren't fish around. It felt as though there might be the chance of it, and that certainly, from a salmon's perspective, has been the case. Certainly for our river this year, it's felt as though you had to be in the right place at the right time, and if a pod of fish came through, and you may remember on one of the podcasts I did with Steve Simons that my wife phoned me halfway through saying she had a 12-pounder come off at the net. And then I was lucky enough, went down next day and I hooked a fish that came off. And then I landed a fish as well, a grilse of about 6 pound, which I was really thrilled with. And even the last day, and Emma has fished incredibly hard, incredibly well. And, you know, we've given it our best shot. And I don't think we could have done any more than that. But we sort of, on that last day, the water was pretty good. We fished the whole day. We fished really hard. We mixed things up. We changed things up, thought about our approaches. And I think sometimes you can almost end up overthinking stuff. But we tried, and it felt as though there weren't sort of fish around to bite the fly or any substantial numbers of fish around to bite the fly. And certainly, you know, on the small lift we had coming into the close, I think I only heard of about 3 fish coming off the river in that time. So that sort of backs that up a little bit. But have I enjoyed it? Of course I have, every second of it. And I'm just back. I've been on the road, travelling around. Emma and I thought we might get a shot on the Tamar on the Devon Cornwall border, and that got washed out. And a friend and another podcast guest, Paul Richardson, had contacted me a day or two before saying I'm going to fish the Wye. So we came back and I drove up there, and I got probably an hour on the river before it got dark, and I got a pull from a fish, which was really cool. And then it got too dark. Next morning, we had a curry in Bilthwells, and the rain just came down and it just didn't stop, and the gutters, water was gushing out. And I think we tried to remain optimistic, but I guess we knew how it was going to play out. But did we give it a good shot to find some fishable water? And we pretty much looked from the source of the river almost down to the sea. You know, we travelled all over the place looking, and that was part of the fun part of that story as well, which was really, really cool and really, really fun. And we racked up some miles looking for some water, and we didn't. Do I regret it? Again, no. We just put the world to rights on so many things. We talked about a lot of stuff. I had that pull from a fish, and sometimes that's enough for me. So I don't know that it's a cool story as well, you know. And do I regret it? Not for 1 second. So that was cool. And then I'm thinking about the trout season as well. And I think about, you know, how we didn't really have much rain. And when we did, funnily enough, it coincided a little bit with the mayfly season as well. And I remember again recording a podcast where I was on the river, and it was just about coming to a nice level. There was still a bit of colour in the water, but I remember standing in a spot and seeing a fish rise, and I threw one of Duncan's Mega Mays over and caught a fish. And while I was talking it through, another one rose in the same spot, and I got lucky enough to get that. So the mayfly for me wasn't a spectacular year in Devon. It was fine, but it wasn't one of those spectacular ones. Gerald and I were fishing late one night. I think he'd brought along some fish and chips, and we sat and ate those and then caught some fish. And I think we both got broken by some sizable fish. There's one I set on, had a big mayfly pattern on, and I just, as I saw it take, lifted into it and just felt dead weight. And it may well have been a sizable sea trout, and it shook and just came off. And Gerald didn't quite hear the expletives from up the river, but I certainly heard his when he got broken by something. So it may have been there was some sea trout around. It may have been some nice trout. But having fun on the river with a lot of friends has been really, really cool. I think the hatches, actually, thinking about it, have been pretty good. And I was fishing with my friend Warren one time, and we hit a large dark olive hatch. I think it was Granham, tell a lie. It was a Granham hatch, and it was spectacular. The fishing, again, was pretty slow. And I think, I don't keep a diary or anything, and I'm just talking into the mic here as the thoughts come to me. And I was thinking about that start to the season, how cool it was, and there were Granham just pouring off the river, but not many fish rising. I know we were fishing some bamboo rods, and I don't even remember if we caught any fish. I can't quite remember now, is the honest answer, and perhaps that is a good enough reason to keep a logbook of it all as well. But I don't really remember some spectacular hatches like that, which have been really cool to see. But it has been sort of a little bit hit and miss, and I was lucky that I caught probably one of the nicest fish of the season, and I was standing in a spot with my dog, and we'd seen a fish rise, and I tied on a fly, got a great drift and a lovely rise that you just lift into. Sometimes our fish in Devon, you have to hit them really quick, but the bigger ones, it is more chalk stream like, and you just lift into these things. And I'd seen the fish shot upstream, and my reel just, I hate using this term, but it did scream. It was nearly smoked, and then it came back downstream again. My dog had seen it because it leapt, and I thought, well, it was the mother lode. It was a amazing fish. I thought it was a little bit bigger. I'm not going to take away from the fish that I actually landed, but I thought it was a little bit bigger. I was surprised when it took to the air. My dog saw it. He got kind of excited about it as well, which was cool to see. And then the fish shot off downstream, and it went in under some roots. And it's at that stage, I don't know if you're the same, that if you have a big one on and it does something that you think, I may not get this, how you mentally prepare yourself for losing that fish, and you try and rationalize it. And having seen it, it was sort of that picture of it leaping is etched in my mind. But you sort of prepare yourself mentally for it. And somehow I stuck on to some good side strain with the rod and managed to get it out, and eventually managed to land it. And I used one of those McLean Way nets, which isn't going to feature in my top 5. I've had it for a number of years now, but they're really good. They keep you nice and honest. As well, if I'm not a specimen hunter, but often it's really hard to figure out. I'm absolutely terrible at working out weight of fish and everything else. And at least if I've got a weigh net, it gives me a good idea. And this one came in just a scratch over 3¼ pound, which for the West Country is an amazing fish and a phenomenal fish. And it was so beautiful. It was so buttery. I was incredibly lucky to get that. So that was, I think, a lovely way. There was almost a couple more days, I think. There weren't many left in the season. And I was straight on the phone to my friend Perry and just said, I think it might be happening down here today. And he came down, fished another pool, locked in something, and that was just over £2. And, for the West Country, 2 fish for over £5 is amazing. And I feel so lucky to be able to target those, and certainly in my case, that being able to catch on dry flies as well. And I found, as I've talked many times on this podcast before, that just taking some time, watching what's going on, and the river unfolds, it tells you everything. The clues are there in front of you, and it's just a case of interpreting them and taking your time, getting into position, and some magic can happen. And there are cases sometimes, and I've probably done it this year as well, where I fish the water rather than fish to the fish. But if it feels to me right that conditions should be good, there's plenty of hatch around, then I'll be a lot more patient. And it's almost a routine really, that I'll sit and wait for that fish to rise if I think there's 3, 4, 5 places, and I sort of circle round, I guess, like a trout in a lake, and waiting for that moment and waiting for that rise. And sometimes it happens, a lot of the time it doesn't, but sometimes it does, and that's been the really fun thing about it. Another memorable day, while I'm just thinking about it, was with my friend Warren. He'd come down from Hampshire, and we'd talked. There'd been a lot of rain, and it was overnight, and I got up early at whatever it was, 4 or 5 o'clock, and dropped him a text and said, look, it's really raining here, bud. Not sure what you want to do. And he'd come back, and he was just so super keen. So I said, well, look, let's head to the higher part of the river and see how we get on there. And we got there, and it's one of those moments where you walk out of the car and go to the bridge. The tour there's a lot smaller, and you look over the bridge and the water's clear, and you think, yes. And I had my fingers crossed. I remember I had both my fingers and both my hands crossed as we walked up there, and we caught some fish that were rising, some nice fish that were rising as well, which was cool. And I remember where we were standing, and I saw the clouds come in, and then it was just one of those cloud bursts, and it was rain like biblical. And it was already within just a few moments. We didn't take rain jackets with us. We were absolutely soaked through. The rain was getting down into our waders, and we just laughed. We laughed, and the plan was hatched that we'd head back to mine, get out the wet stuff, and then go find some fishbowl water further up the river again, which we did. And it's one of those moments that you think sometimes it's not going to happen, and everything slots into place. And we got lucky and caught some fish again on some dry flies, and great fun. It was reminded me, I think I've talked about this, I think it was on my personal Facebook or somewhere. I wrote a little thing about it that so I was reminded of somebody that I'd taken out on the river near where Warren and I were fishing, and he's no longer with us, sadly. And I was thinking about he'd fished chalk streams all his life and was giggling like a small child when these fish were throwing themselves at the parachute coachman. So when Warren and I fished up there, I tied one of those in and thought of Brian Lodge and thought about that day. And it was really nice to be able to do that. And so I guess, with everything still winding down, like I say, we've had a lot of rain here, that I've had friends on the phone already about grayling days and planning mini trips away to fish for grayling. And so although it can be easy to be a little sad about the end of the trout, there's lots of other stuff to look forward to as well. So, it will be grayling mainly for me on the radar, and it'll be those that I will look to try and catch. And there's some places that I've not fished in a few years that I'd really like to fish. And I'm already hatching plans about that, and perhaps heading to the chalk streams again and seeing if I can find a grayling up there as well. So all those sorts of things are really cool to look forward to. The magazine, and we're well ahead of schedule now as well. So the winter, this is being recorded on the 6th of October, and the winter one's pretty much there. So I'm going to have after I've recorded this, I'm going to have a final read through and then package it up and send it over to John to have a look at as well and do his magic on. So that's going to be really, really cool. So I thought with this, as I said, this isn't an advertorial. It's not. I've not been given this stuff to write about. I thought I'd just talk you through. And perhaps while I go, as I said, this is all free form. I'm not reading from notes or anything else. I'm just sort of speaking about stuff that I've been using and the experiences. And I hope you find this of interest and of value too. So my first choice it may draw some sharp intakes of breath. I think more from a cost perspective than anything else. They're the Patagonia Foot Tractor wading boots, and these boots are not cheap. They're over £400. You may be able to find deals for them around if you search, but here's my argument for them. I wear wading boots a lot. And I've had pairs where the soles have fallen off over a short period of time. I've had some that won't take studs, so I spend most of my time like Bambi on ice, trying to stand up. And I've had issues, like I say, with laces, with the hardware where you attach the laces that have ripped the laces and made fishing a little bit difficult too. I'm also going to start by saying I love Patagonia as a company and what they stand for and what they're doing, and they will stand up and put their money for their mouth where their mouth is. But also the construction of these boots. I've had them season and a half, something like that now, maybe from this season. I can't quite remember now, but they're so comfortable. They're easy to get on and off as well. The upper is actually made, I think it's part leather and then part nylon. So that gives that little bit of flexibility and makes it really easy. And you know what it's like after a long day on the water, trying to get your wading boots off. These, you just undo them and off they come nice and easily. And I'm really impressed with that. I like how the laces do up really easily as well. As I said, that hardware at the top is really good. The laces haven't rotted, and my wading boots don't get much of a chance to get dry. So, what I've previously been saying about them ripping and stuff, I understand. I'm part of the reason for that. But it's the hardware sometimes pulling on there that wears them as well. And when you pull them a little bit tight, they start splitting. So I like that. They're made by Dana, who I believe are in Oregon somewhere or other, who specialise in making outdoor clothing, shoes particularly, I think. And they're really, really well put together. But the selling point for me is the tractor system. And it's an aluminium bar or a series of bars that go across the sole. Now, I reckon if I was standing on the river and you pushed me, my feet wouldn't move. I'd sort of bend backwards and go over, but my feet would hold position really, really well. And I've noticed that traction is significantly better. And I found no matter, even if I'm using tungsten studs, over time they do wear down. And also, they do fall out, and I've tried many ways of attaching them to keep them in place. These so far seem to be doing the job. But for me, the real selling point is Emma. And Emma isn't the best wader in the world, or not the most... I wouldn't say she's not the worst wader. She's not a confident wader. And she ended up buying a pair of these, and it's totally transformed her wading. So that to me is a big thumbs up from that perspective as well, that I think I watch how she walks on the river now, and it's completely different. And that traction, there might be arguments that those aluminium bars could potentially spook trout with noise and stuff like that. But frankly, I don't care too much about that. I'd rather be able to stand up, and I'd rather go home dry. So if it means I sacrifice it, I've talked on the intro bit, really, that, I caught a sizable trout wearing them, and it wasn't an issue at all from that perspective as well. So I think they're super well constructed. And I look, when there's something expensive, I look at cost per wear, and the way these are made, I think they're going to last. That's my gut, that they're going to last quite a long time. So I don't think I'm going to need new wading boots for a while. I'm sort of flirting with the idea, and I've got the previous incarnation of the Patagonia lightweight wading boots that are almost coming to the end of the line for them. Completely different boot to these ones, and they're just starting to show signs of fatigue, and I think the usual way that wading boots go. But I'm thinking of buying a lightweight pair for super small stream fishing where grip isn't going to be such a big issue. So I'm going to have a look at that stage. So bear with me on that with the cost point of view, but I think from construction, the way it's constructive, it's got a Vibram sole. I think the way it's put together, I think they're going to last. So I think I'm going to get a long time out of them. Sure, if you're not fishing a hell of a lot, then it may be quite a big investment. But if you're hitting the river a lot, and you do find, and as I get a little bit older, I find I tweak muscles in my back or my side where I've just slipped on a rock, then these are stopping that happening. So I'm really, really happy with these, and I'm really happy to say I think they're pretty good. Simply because they seem to be doing the job fabulously well, and they're comfortable, and they're really, really easy to wear. So I'm going to kick off with those, the Patagonia Foot Tractor wading boot system. One of the things I do love doing over the closed season, though, is sorting out fly boxes. I'm not obsessive or not an OCD type person, but I just really enjoy doing it. And as the season goes on, I sort of put flies all over the place, and some are loose in the boxes, and just having a good sort out is fun. And you sometimes, I don't know if you're the same as me, that I end up culling a few of them that have been sitting in the corner of the box for quite some time, and get rid of those to possibly make room for new ones. And I'm not tying a lot of flies at all now. I tied some the other day. They were probably the first time in 2.5 years, something like that. Great pattern I've talked about before on here, Paul Proctor's Pearl Butter Merger. I love that. And I tied some. I didn't even have the right hooks. I had some sort of slightly longer size 14s. I find for me personally, the size 14 does everything I want it to do. So only using those, but I had some sort of longer shank ones, and you tied some up just on the off chance, and they actually worked, which was great news. But I may tie some more, but I've had, know some really cool people who tie really great flies, and I'm a big believer in supporting cottage industries, or little well-made products, artisanal products, and I kind of like that. And I bought flies from many people that I've talked about before, so it's kind of nice when they turn up and fill them into a fly box. And the fly box I want to mention as my second choice is the Fulling Mill Tactical Max box. Now, again, this comes in at $29.95 each. I was sent one of these, so I said to the guys there, well, I'm not going to take it as a freebie. So I went onto their site and bought the equivalent amount of flies from their website. I thought that was the correct thing to do, and then that allowed me to actually say that it wasn't a placement. It was, I've in effect bought it. So I always like to be completely clear about those sorts of things. But the Tactical Max box anyway holds, I think it's 900 odd flies, 950, 960 flies. Now, I don't carry tons, but what that does allow me to do is leave spaces between all the flies, so it's easy to see them. It would be a wonderful problem to have 960 flies and putting them in there, particularly if they were tungsten bead ones. I would imagine that box would get pretty heavy, 500 or 600 in. But what this allows me to do is have lots of spacing. And so I can see the flies really, really easily. I can select them really easily and make some semblance of the mess that I usually have a little less so, and it's been great from that point of view. I absolutely love it because it's British made as well, so that's a big thumbs up from me. I like the way it's high density slip foam, and it holds the flies really, really well. And I've not had issues with flies slipping out and falling around. It's usually me where I've just snipped them off and thrown the fly in after a day on the water. But I found these have been really, really good. They're a nice, bright red colour, so I guess if you drop them, they're nice and easy to spot. They fit. I use a Patagonia fly vest, and I've actually can fit the box really easily into the vest, so I think it's great from that point of view as well. It's a good size, carries plenty of flies, British made, fits in my vest nice and easily, and yeah, I've got loads of room to have as many flies as I need. You know, I could max it out if I wanted to. I don't need to, but I can see the flies nice and easily in the box as well. So that's been great. I've been using that this season and I've been really, really pleased with it. And I'm sure I'll get that out and give that a good tidy through at some stage. But super impressed with that. British company as well. So really like that aspect of it as well. So choice number 2, the Fully Milled Tactical Max box. So we're up to choice 3 now, and if you listen to the podcast, if you're a regular listener, you'll know how important or how much importance I put on a fly line, and getting that combination of rod and line to work really well in harmony with each other. And as I've always said, I would rather spend more money on a fly line and less on a rod to get everything to work really well together. And my humble advice again is, if you're thinking of getting a new rod, take some fly lines along, try the rod. I think that's a really important thing, and I think sometimes say recommend me a rod, or people might say recommend me a rod, but what I like and what you like may be completely different things. I find a deeper bending rod, so a more mid-action rod, and some people like a stiffer action rod, and I enjoy, as you know, fishing bamboo rods that are even deeper loading as well. So I always think, first off, we're going down the rod route, and we will do shortly anyway, but I think for me it's really, really important to try something and try a variety of lines and say, yep, this is the right combination. Because then you're going to find you're not going to change it or need to change it a great deal if it works. And if a fly line wears out or whatever over a period of time, you know that's going to be the one that's going to work with it. But the fly line I really like at the moment is the Rio Technical Trout line. And I like this one for a number of reasons. Super slick, nice and easy to cast, obviously. I like the taper as well, and I've been a fan of the Rio Gold for many, many years, and I still probably will continue to, and that's probably more so from the days when I was doing instruction, and that line loads a rod incredibly well, particularly for a beginner. That's what we want them to be able to do. That's what I want my pupils to be able to do, is to get the rod and line working together in harmony. And so that's been really, really good. But I like this line, the technical, more so because of the front taper. It's a little bit more delicate, and yet it will still load really well, but it presents the fly delicately as well. So I like that dissipation of energy is not quite as aggressive. So I kind of like it from that perspective. I like Rio fly lines as well. I'm not going to make any secret of that fact. So what else can I tell you about the line? It standard sort of the head length is 52 foot long. It's 90 foot long as well. The fly line has most lines on there. Again, it's got some loops on the front which are really neat, and they seem to work just fine for me. I never get bogged down in the technical aspect. Well, I've got to cut that off and replace it with this. It's worked just fine for me. Could I catch more fish from it? I'm not 100% sure. I always go back to how I feel about the casting and my ability to deliver that fly. And it doesn't matter if I do all those things and I can't cast it very well. It doesn't matter, no matter what I do, how many times I grease or degrease or don't. It doesn't matter. If I can't land the fly delicately on the water, then it doesn't matter what else I'm doing behind it. So do I think the loops make any difference? Personally for me, no. But that's my personal preference. It seems to work just fine for me. I have no complaints on that, but I still, and I've probably mentioned on podcasts previously, I still practice my casting. I still think about that. What do I need to do? How can I improve that? And that, I think, gives me a greater chance of success. And that would be my first port of call that I always think. And the next one is getting that rod and line combination that suits me personally. If I've got that, then I'm in really good shape and I'm really happy about that. So that's what I think about. I think the fly line, yes, they're not cheap, but they last a long time. I've used to say I had an old Rio Gold that was beaten around. We cast it in a car park. We did all sorts of stuff. I had pupils getting leaders wrapped around it, and it still came back from more. So I personally, in my experience, and it is just my experience, but I've not ever had issues with these fly lines. And so it's a confidence thing for me. I know if I'm going to buy one of those, it's going to be a good fly line. It's designed, the people at Rio are good people. Simon Gorsworth, who's been a guest on the podcast, cares passionately about the product that they're putting out and the design process there. So, I'm really happy to vote with my feet with their fly lines. I think they're great. Again, I bought these and I have a few of those now. I've been sort of quietly building up a little collection across the board for me that I can fish a number of different line weights should I want them. But I really, really do like them. I think they're a really cool fly line. So I thought my next choice, I'd choose a rod that I've been using this year. And it's something a little bit different. It goes back to what I was saying about the fly tyres and artisanal fly tyres or rod builders. And there's a rod manufacturer I'd had an eye on for many, many, many years called Gatti. And they're an Italian company owned by Sandro Gatti. And they build, their blanks are produced in Italy. And they make a big thing about saying they can say made in Italy on there because they're not made anywhere else. And they do some really cool and interesting things. And I like stuff when it's a little bit different as well. And I like to fish lighter lines. And I like to fish a lighter, slightly longer rod. And it depends where I'm fishing. For a bigger river, I tend to fish. It's a rod that Luke Bannister built me, a 9.5 foot full weight, which is a fabulous rod. And then if I'm going a little bit smaller or the water's a little bit lower, I'll fish this Gatti rod, and it's a 9-foot rod, and it's quoted as a 2-stroke 3-weight, or a 3-stroke 2, he calls it actually. And I've tried both lines on it. I put a 2-weight creek on there. It's a Rio Creek, which is designed for fishing small streams. So it's got a slightly more aggressive front taper. It loads the rod quickly. And so for up-close fishing, I think that would work really well. But in fact, I found the sweet spot with that rod is with the Rio line I was just describing, the technical line. And I put a 3-weight on there. And again, what I was saying about rods, I guess, that it's a personal choice. These are more mid-action rods. They recover really, really quickly. They look super cool. But to cast and to play fish with, and again, coming back to many of the other things I've talked about on this podcast, about the ability of a rod, of course, to deliver the fly line, but importantly as well, and I've noticed, I guess, where I've been fishing a lot more, that I'm being lucky enough to catch some bigger fish, that I look at that ability of the rod to play the fish as well. And I think I was fishing one of the chalk streams and fished this rod, and it was absolutely sublime. I fish it a lot, actually, and I think it's a really sublime rod, particularly as a dry fly rod, I have to say, more than anything else. I think I've thrown it as part of a duo setup as well. I can't quite remember now. I generally, if I think I'm going to fish a duo with graphite, I will probably fish the Bannister rod. But as a dry fly rod, and being a 3-weight line, a 4 weight does make a little bit of a difference. That extra mass allows me to propel those heavier flies out, or the duo system out, comparable to a 2 or a 3 weight. So it gives me a little bit more flexibility. But to me, it feels a high days and holidays, I'm going to fish a dry fly sort of scenario. There's some fish rising, there's some nice fish. I want to land delicately on the water with the lighter line, and it's a fabulous rod from that. I like, as I said, the action suits me really, really well. It's a mid-action rod. Like I say, recovers really quickly. The model is the Ghost, it's called, but the Ghost was a light-coloured blank, actually. But I think Sandro didn't have that in stock when I ordered it. So mine's a darker colour blank. If you're a cork geek, the cork quality is excellent. The finish on them is excellent. I think probably I got this just before the Brexit came through, so I did get hit by customs, but just the right side of it. But I'm really pleased with it. I like it because it's different. I go through these spells of wanting to fish something just a little bit different, that looks a little bit different. Is there any downside to it? Well, I think there's one tiny one. If you are a traveller with a rod, then it's a 3-piece rod. And fitting that in luggage may be a little bit more problematic. I've not tried it. I was hoping early October to try and get out to Montana, but obviously, as many of us know, the conditions haven't allowed it. So I haven't had a chance to load that up. And I actually spoke to Sandro and said, is there a chance of a 4-piece rod? I love the blank. I love how it casts. I love how it fishes. That would be the only very slight issue I would have, but it doesn't bother me in the slightest. I keep it in the car and I use it. If I'm not going to be fishing bamboo or glass, that will be there. That will be one of the mainstays. And I think it's one of those rods that I think I'll keep and just enjoy, and think it's a fabulous one to fish with. And I like it very much. And I said, being a little bit different, that's what I kind of like as well. So it's a brand that's been around a fair while, I think. As I said, I've been aware of them for 10, 15, 20 years and haven't got round to getting one of these rods, but I really liked it. I thought it was great. I bought that one, as I said. I saw they do double-handed rods as well, and I'm sort of flirting the idea of one of those as well. That's how impressed I've been with them. So yeah, Gatti Ghost, fantastic rod. It's a 9-foot. It is a 3-weight or a 2-weight. And I've had fun fishing with that. A lot of fun fishing with that, actually. It's been a great rod to fish with. So next up, I've been talking about setting up grayling days and stuff like that, and thinking about layering systems and making sure I don't get cold. I don't know if you're the same when you fish. I enjoy fishing with friends, and particularly grayling more so, because it's more of a sociable thing. And usually the people I'll be fishing with, we start the day with breakfast somewhere and lots of fishing talk and lots of cups of coffee, and sometimes we're out there sitting drinking coffee for a long time and chatting. But that for me is part of it. It is more of a get together than anything else, and the fishing and the fish become a happy byproduct of that. But there are some of those days, and they're not here at the moment, but there are some of those days that it is pretty cold. And I think that's probably when we do end up drinking more coffee and talking for longer, that it's on those colder days. But I've been thinking about those a little bit. And so my next choice is something from Dryology, and Steve down where he's just not that far down the line from me in Devon, has some really great and well thought out bits of kit. And I recently bought the Alpha Code top as part of a layering system I'm thinking of building up for winter fishing. So really nicely constructed. There's a couple of colours. There's green. I went for the blue, actually. It's a nice colour. It is Polartec. It is lightweight, and it is really, really nice to wear. I think my plan is to probably have a t-shirt, have this, have a Primaloft coat, and then my rain jacket. And I think if I'm really lucky, on the coldest of days, I should be nice and toasty. But I'm really pleased with that. And I like, again, it's a British company, and it's nice to support and buy product from a British company as well. So really, really like that one. I use their rain jacket, which I think I've talked about, and that has been a mainstay of my arsenal as well, and has kept me dry on many, many wet days. So I've been really pleased with it. So it was a really easy choice for me to look at their stuff as a part of my layering system. So yeah, it's getting me excited thinking about the Grayling days, actually sitting talking about this at the moment and thinking about that. It comes in, that one is £100, or just over, I think, actually, if I remember rightly. And I think it's breathable as well, actually, which is great news as well. So that should be pretty cool from that point of view. So yeah, really, really pleased with that. So it should be, yeah, given the grading season upon us, I should be nice and toasty with that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to those. So that should be really, really cool. So my next piece of kit, we're going to look at a reel. And this is a reel from Sage, and it's called their Trout line. Or it's called the Trout, but it's from their Trout line of reels. And the reason I chose this is that I fish bamboo rods a lot. And I've got a Mark II Hardy Cascapedia, which came in the 90s, early 2000s, I think, which is a great reel. But because I use different rods, I wanted something that would complement some of the other ones as well. So I chose the Sage Trout reel because it looks kind of a classic reel, and I think Sage say it looks like one of their old early reels. But for me, there's a hint, if you're an old fart like me, the Hardy Marquis, and there's a hint of that about it. I don't know if I should say that or not, but it is a really, really handsome reel. The drag is really cool. I really like the way that works as well. So it's a sealed drag system on there as well. And you know, at the beginning of this, I was talking about the fish that almost smoked me. I wasn't using a bamboo rod on that day because I thought it was probably going to be duo time, and it turned out it wasn't. So I had Luke's graphite rod with me, and I actually had a Sage Click on there at the moment, but it would have been really interesting to see how that reel would have performed when that great big fish went shooting upstream and then shooting downstream again. But I really, really like it. I think a bamboo rod deserves a nice reel to go with it. That having been said, one of the lighter ones I fished, I've got an old, again, if you're an old fart like me, an old System 2, and that looks really cool on there. And sometimes I like mixing modern reels, so we'll use a Sage Click on there as well, and pairing a modern reel with what is seen as an older material, although the rods are, you know, relatively new, with an older material, I think it looks really nice. But I think this reel, to me at least, looks really nice on a bamboo rod. It's made to go not just on a bamboo rod, but for me it sits perfectly on there. I really, really like how it looks. As I said, when you pull line off the reel, I think it's really fantastic. I'm a big fan of how it sounds, how it looks, and when it's paired up with the bamboo rod, I really, really like where it is. You know, it's not going to be one of the cheapest reels out there. Reels, there's so many interesting, and there is so much interesting stuff out there right now. I wouldn't call myself a real geek, to be perfectly honest. As I said previously, you know, I'm really into the rod and line combination, and the reel not so much so. But I've found latterly, and with those bamboo rods, I'd like to do them justice with something that's a little bit different. And I've been eyeing up the salmon version of it as well. I just think it's beautiful, and there's so many times I've put the reel in my basket and taken it out again and then put it back in, and I've not got round to it yet. And the salmon reels see a fair bit of use, but probably not as much as trout stuff. You know, salmon's more, where I'm living certainly, is more weather dependent. So, you know, it's not like I'm going to use one of those every day, whereas the trout, you know, if the conditions are right, I'm going to be using that most days. And I think, it's one of those things that's a keeper. I got tipped off on those by Warren. He had one first, so I can't claim it was my idea, but I just like the aesthetic. I like how it looks. And from there, so that's, I think, my final choice. I hope you've enjoyed these. As I said, I make a big thing. It's the same with the magazine, that we don't have adverts, and this is just my personal choice. You know, my life does revolve around fishing to such an immense degree. Sometimes I do choose more expensive stuff, and I'm aware of that, but it's because I use it a lot, and I know longevity as well, and that's really, really important. I'm not the sort of person who's always buying new reels or new rods. I do look at rods a fair bit, I've got to be honest with you, but I'm not changing stuff. When I was working as a guide, I was probably more so because I wanted to make sure I bought the most up-to-date kit for my guests. But I'm less so, and so I'm being a little bit more choosy now, I think, about what I'm using, why I'm using it, and the reasons for it. And so I like to think the process through, and then think, right, this would work on this, and you know, the reel I just described, I can use that probably on 3 rods, so that's fine, and it's going to stay. It's not going anywhere. So I can I know it's not easy always to justify these things, but I think that's probably why I look at these things, I think about them, and like I mentioned earlier, the cost per use for me is something I think about a lot as well. And so if I'm using the reel 100 days of the year, well, that's a pretty good use out of it. And then if I times that by 3 years or 4 years, then all of a sudden that, you know, I'm not going to change that reel over that period of time, then to me, economically, it kind of starts to stack up. So that's how I like to try and think about those things. So I hope that's been of interest. It's only a short list. I could have done loads more. I'd like to mention, as I touched on, you know, the people who I've bought flies from: Philippa Hake, Stuart Foxall, Ian Gordon, Duncan at Innovative Flies, friends who have given them to me as well, and I bought some flies from John up in Scotland as well, so thank you for those. Warren for giving me some flies, Griff Jones for giving me some flies. It's great to be able to do that, so thank you to everyone for the service, for tying them and getting to use them and catch some fish on them as well, which is great fun. I've really enjoyed that. As I've said previously, and even in this podcast, I've just not really got the tying bug anymore. And, you know, even while I'm talking about it, this is the time usually for me that I'm starting to think about tying up a load of nymphs ready for winter season, but I'm just not doing it. I think I've probably got enough flies that will last me a fair amount of time, so probably not. I've just enjoyed supporting people's efforts and enterprises, and that's been really, really important to me. So stuff like that's been really good fun to see. And then when you see those flies sort of turn up, it's really, really nice to see those. I ordered on one of the podcasts, I've got a new bamboo rod from Luke Bannister Cumming. It's the 3-piecer. It's a 7'9" 4-weight, and I'm really excited about that. I was hoping that I got out to Montana, and I think it's almost finished, and I was hoping to take that along, and I've ordered a 3-piecer that I'm hoping, we talked about length of tube and everything else, and I measured it in my travel bag, and it looks like it's going to fit in there. So I think if I do get to go away that's going to be coming with me. So that's going to do some hard work, and I'm looking forward to using that. Again, that process of the fly lines, I'm really looking forward to when it arrives, trying the different fly lines through it, see how that looks, see how it fishes, and I can't wait for that. So that's going to be good fun. I went for the 4-weight for the reasons I said earlier, really, that, I wanted a 4-weight line that would allow me to fish a duo if I'm traveling somewhere. I could fish that, and perhaps then I would take a nymph rod should I need it, sort of thing. And we've got the Fly Culture Italian Job Tour that was postponed this year, that we're going out to fish with Vito next year, and that will be coming along on that trip to fish with him in Italy and catch some Italian trout, which would be a first for me. I'm really looking forward to that, and being able to travel again when we can and when it's safe to do so. I can't wait to do so. I'm looking forward to that immensely as well. We've got loads planned for next year. Again, a lot of it is on the basis of how easily we can travel and how easily we can get groups of people together. And I've got lots of things planned for that as well. It may be next year, it may be the year after. Thank you everyone as well for the support for the magazine. It's been amazing. It's just something we've wanted to put out, and the whole ethos about it was that we wanted to put out a magazine we'd enjoy reading ourselves, and the feedback, and thank you so much for the amount of people who write to me and say how much they're enjoying it is really, really pleasing. And as you know, I try and reply to everyone. I do reply to everyone as quickly as I possibly can, except when I'm fishing. And I'm so pleased you're enjoying it. And we're selling out of just about everything now, and we're growing the magazine. This run, we increased the print run by 20%, and I think this one's probably going to go as well. And like I said at the beginning, the winter one is just about ready. I'm really pleased with how that looks, how it reads. I can't wait to see John's design work on that. So I'm really looking forward to that. And, upwards and onwards, and we're always trying to evolve. We're always trying to give you something that's a little bit different. And the whole ethos behind this as well has been, to rotate writers, to keep everything fresh so that you don't know what you're going to get. And I see fly fishing globally as one sort of family. And although the magazine is, obviously its feet are very firmly planted in the UK, I don't think it matters so much for us, because we're not telling you how to. We're not telling you how to fish a reservoir or a river or whatever it is. So these stories come from around the world, and I kind of like that we're a family of fly anglers sharing our experiences, sharing our stories of what the fishing means to us. So I've never been as worried about that, but obviously our bias tends to be more in the UK, but I enjoy reading stories from around the world, and I hope you're enjoying that too. Always drop me a line, please, if there's something you think we should be doing, could be doing. I listen to podcast guest suggestions from people, so they've been really great from that point of view as well. And as ever, thank you again. We're through 100 podcasts now, and the support for this, the growth in it has been extraordinary. It's just great fun to do, and something I was going to do once a month became twice a month. And then when the lockdown came, I just wanted to give something to people that they could get to the riverbank virtually, I guess, in some respects. And again, with this, I just try and vary the content and keep it interesting. Hopefully you're finding that interesting and varied. And I think that's really important to me, and hopefully that's why you're continuing to enjoy this. But that's my pick of the season, a little bit about my season as well. And as I said, I can't wait already for the trout season to open up in Devon again. That's going to be a 6 months wait now, but I'm hoping there'll be lots of fishing in between that. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to catching up with friends. And you never know, I might tie a fly. I doubt it, but I might tie a fly during that time. But thanks as always for listening to the Fly Culture podcast. I so enjoy doing these, and perhaps you'll consider, if you don't already, perhaps you'll consider subscribing as well. But thanks so much for listening to this one.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly print magazine. For more information, please visit flyculturemag.com. You can also find Fly Culture on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter.